Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about three news stories in the U.S. One is the state of Georgia, which had moved drivers from the learner's phase into the probationary phase, and now Governor Kemp has rescinded that offer, and these drivers are required to take a driver's test. Second one is a wheel coming off in Ontario, Canada, and near miss. Nobody was injured in that one, fortunately. And the last one was CDL driving schools in the state of California selling driver's licenses. This is one of the reasons why in many countries in the world, driving schools are not allowed to do road testing and pass students on to get their license, unfortunately. So those are the three news stories that we're going to talk about today, and we'll give you some more information about that and my thoughts and feelings and what kind of an impact it's going to have for you if you live in one of those areas or other places in terms of driving and getting your license and whatnot. Stick around. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about news stories, how that impacts your driving. RJ is here. Hello, Carrie's here, tuning in from Minnesota, Minneapolis, and it's still kind of crazy about what's going on in the United States and in Canada in terms of COVID-19 and the impact it's having on your driver's license and you getting a driver's license. And so if you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know if you're preparing for a license, what they're doing there. And again, I think I forgot to put the link down in the description, but I will put the link down in the description to my website there, and that'll give you the what your state or province is doing in terms of the license tests and what's happening there. So Agnes is in Tennessee. Joe's in Toronto. Gorgeous day there. Road test July 2nd. Purchased the pass your road test first time. Awesome, Agnes. And if you have any questions at all, Agnes, by all means, drop me an email and we'll help you out. Janet's here from Ontario as well. Kendall. No, you're not late, Kendall. Just got started here on the channel. So excellent stuff. So the first thing, actually, Joe is here, and that's really great that Joe's here because Joe asked me a question in one of the comments, and I wanted to leave it here to kind of talk about it live as opposed to trying to write a huge long comment about that, because I think it impacts a lot of other people who are trying to get their license as well. And I don't know what it is about the province of Ontario, Canada, but they seem to have a lot of wheels come off trucks, commercial semi trucks. And I'm not really sure what it is about that, because I can remember, I think it was the late 1990s, they had 3 or 4 trucks, which all seemed to be from the province of Quebec for some other reason, that had wheels, like the dual wheel assembly, come off the trailer while the truck is going down the freeway. And at one point there was a pretty awful crash where a couple of people were killed because the wheel assembly jumped the bearing or the barrier in the middle of the freeway and crushed another car coming in the opposite direction. And so the question that Joe asked me yesterday about this was, young people getting their driver's license, and don't make any mistake about it in terms of young people being very aware, knowing that there's a high risk. Unfortunately, many of the driving instructors out there are teaching from a point of view of fear, which is very unfortunate. And this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, right? And my response to that, I kind of gave that some thought overnight because Joe asked me that question about this, about how do you reassure a new driver that he or she is not going to have a crash, that he or she is going to be going up and down the road and a set of wheels is going to come off a semi-truck. So, and my response to that is not, it's part and parcel of driving. It's, in my mind, it's part and parcel of life. Everything in life has a risk associated with this. I mean, getting out of the bathtub after you've had a shower is a risk. I worked with a woman years ago when I worked at Parkwood Hospital, doing driver rehabilitation, getting people back to driving after they'd sustained an injury. And this woman was having a shower, got out of her bathtub, slipped, and broke her back. And she was paraplegic. And so everything we do in life, there is risk associated with. So basically what we're doing as we go through life is we're mitigating risk, right? We're trying to put measures in place to reduce the amount of risk, because there's always risk. We go out our front door, we cross the street, there's risk involved with that. So, and I'm also a big proponent of, the energy you put out in the world is the energy you're going to kind of get back, right? So if you have good energy and you have good thinking about the world and those types of things, then the world is most of the time going to go according to plan, right? It's like that saying that they say life is, 90% our reaction to it and 10% what happens to us. So it's really about our reaction. So if you're, positive about driving and things aren't going to happen and you manage space well and those types of things, most of the time it's not going to happen, right? But for young people, learning how to drive there's a risk associated with it, and unfortunately there's hazards involved. And my response to that in terms of risk with driving, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of tractor trailers and trucks that go up and down the road every day, and it's a very rare occurrence that wheels come off or something falls off the back of the truck or those types of things. For example, in the early 1990s, Schneider National, which is one of the largest trucking companies in the United States, in the early 1990s, so we're talking almost 30 years ago, they had 15,000 tractors and 15,000 trailers, and they comprised only 2% of the trucking industry. So that gives you some idea how many trucks and trailers are going up and down the road every day. It's unlikely that something is, of that magnitude is going to happen. I mean, probably a little bit higher probability in the province of Ontario because it seems to be systemic to Ontario. I haven't heard about it in other places. I mean, some of the smart drivers here may have heard it in other places and whatnot, but that's what happened. So reassure young people that there's risk, and what you're teaching them in terms of teaching them how to drive, you're teaching them how to mitigate that risk, how to reduce the chances of being involved in a crash, the chances of making a mistake, or those types of things. So know that's what's happening in terms of the news and whatnot. And wheels coming off the back of the truck is a fluke, and it's one of the types of crashes that you're probably not going to be involved in your lifetime. So that's what I would say to a young person who had some anxiety around that issue in terms of learning how to drive. So my friend Lightning is here, Lightning Farron. Stone, I plan on getting back to driving a semi-truck. Awesome. Neptune, a wheel coming off a large moving truck has the intensity of a missile. Yes, no doubt, Neptune, because they're under load, right? And that wheel assembly, the duals on there is probably 1,000, 1,200 pounds. It's incredibly heavy. Jaden asked me a question here. Just let me get that going here. Jaden, I was supposed to get the picture of my friends with their licenses for driving, but it being so busy, we never got a chance to do it, but maybe on the weekend. Excellent. Okay. Animals, I'd imagine, yes, if you got no practice after passing the knowledge test, you will likely fail the road test if you do it shortly after. Best to take the road test when you're prepared. Indeed. Jack is thinking of getting a really cool pickup truck. I will send you a picture on Facebook. Awesome. I look forward to that, Jaden. Agnes, yes, every day, Agnes, we wake up and take risk. Defensive driving, yes. And, defensive driving, as for those of you who've been around for a while and watching the videos on the channel here, defensive driving is about space management, right? Don't hang out near semi-trucks when you're driving up and down the freeway or on roads and those types of things. Either hang back away from them or, speed up and get past them. Don't hang out around semi-trucks. Neptune, I saw a police chase years ago that took place in Texas where someone stole an 18-wheeler. The wheels came off literally in flames. I'm sure that would have been an interesting chase with police vehicles in a semi-truck. Kendall, can I take the driving test now and take the road test later? So, Kendall, are you asking me about the learner's permit and then taking your driver's test later? Just clarify that for me. I'm not sure what you're asking me. Samira, I'm in remission from lymphoma cancer now. That's really great. I'm happy to hear that. I have problems with my back right now, and so it's kind of the first thing in life that's kind of slowed me down. So, Samira, I just beat lymphoma cancer. That is really great. I'm really happy to hear that. That's awesome. Okay, so the next story that I wanted to talk about quickly was the state of Georgia, which is still in the news, and unfortunately, 20,000 drivers. Initially, Georgia was the first state to waive the driver's test and move young new drivers from the learner's phase into the probationary phase, and now the state of Georgia, Governor Kemp has rescinded that because of political pressure, mostly on the part of a driving school there in the States that had an online petition, and people signed the online petition because when you say to people that young drivers are not going to have a driving test, they instantly panic and go to the worst. I don't know what is with that energy, that as soon as people kind of start down the fear-mongering road and they say, oh my God, they're not learning and they don't have enough skills and those types of things, then people really believe that. And the other thing that I would like to clarify in terms of Georgia and Wisconsin moving forward to try and move young people through and get them a license, because politicians know that this is going to have an impact on our economy if young people don't have access to transportation. So now they've rescinded that. Now they say that those 20,000 young people, or new drivers rather, that got their license with that moving them through without a license test, now have to take a road test by the end of September 2020. How are they going to do that? How is the government going to do that? How are the DMVs going to do that? How are they going to provide the sheer number of personnel that are needed to be able to do that and deal with the new drivers coming through, because they're dealing with tens of thousands of road tests every week, especially in the state of Georgia, because I think Georgia is the third or fourth most populated state in the U.S. So it's the fourth most populated after Florida. So, I just don't know how they're going to do with it. I mean, California hasn't even reopened yet. So, I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of driver's tests in the state of California. There is some rumors that it's going to open up by the end of the month, but still, incredible number of people. So, unfortunately, that's been rescinded. Those drivers are now going to have to take a driver's test. I am very much in favor of authorities moving young people from the learner's phase into the novice phase of their road test and giving into the GDL, which is the graduated driver's license, and giving them a license. But don't just carte blanche give them a license without any sort of oversight. There needs to be oversight, okay? And I've suggested that they bring the local driving schools on board, and they, after 3 or 4 weeks, they go in, they take a mini driver's test with a local driving school at 6 months, and then at a year they take another one. So there's these little mini driver's test assessments that they take with a driving instructor, and all of this will work. Now, this ties into the last story of why authorities are reluctant to bring driving schools on board. In the state of California, they convicted a driving school owner, a CDL driving school owner, of selling truck driving licenses and bus driving licenses to the students. And this is not the first time that this has happened, that this power has been abused. And this is what authorities are afraid of. If they give this power to the driving schools and say, okay, young people, you're going to be moved from the learner's phase into the novice phase, and you're going to go and do a mini assessment at a local driving school, authorities are afraid that the driving schools are just going to start selling this. They're going to start selling the assessments. They're going to say, okay, give me $100 and you don't have to go up for an assessment. I'll just pass you here and hand in the paperwork. So that's the fear. And this is what, in my mind, is really holding this up, of bringing local driving schools on board, because of, these stories that persist in the media, that driving school owners are simply selling the licenses and not doing the work that they need to do. However, there are lots of personnel on the payroll that police driving schools, so it's probably not going to happen as much as people think. But unfortunately, if you get one person out of 100 people, that just taints the whole thing, and then they abandon the system instead of trying to, police it and bring these people on board. So, those are the stories that I want to talk about. We can kind of turn this over to question and answer period now, but those are what's going on in the states. And the other problem with the state of Georgia is that Georgia has had an impact on North Carolina, because North Carolina was trying to move drivers from the learner's phase into the novice phase, and that's being held up. And I believe that the reason that is being held up is because Georgia has had to rescind that and claw back the legislation that moved drivers through the system. Wisconsin is still moving drivers through the system, and they're the only ones that have been able to do this and move young drivers through. you know, it's like I said, I don't understand how they're going to deal with the backlog and expect people to wait 6 months, a year, 18 months, or 2 years to take a driver's test. We need to get this going. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to question and answer for the rest of this. Carrie, driver head on freeway, hit construction cone and the wind blew it in front of my car. Braked on reflex, then looked in the mirror close to me, let off the brakes. Okay, so Carrie, was it a witch's hat? You know, one of the ones that are only about 18 inches, 2 feet tall, or was it a delineator, one of the 3 feet ones? Just let me know there, and because that'll determine my response. Oh, okay. So Kendall, you're going to be taking your learner's test now and the road test later. Brilliant. Okay, awesome. Agnes, yep, okay. And Jaden, playing Roblox and someone got shot. Joe, really appreciate your thoughts about the flying truck tires, Rick. It's a mystery why there's such a problem here in Ontario. Never saw this when I lived in Vancouver. Maybe all our winter road salt. Joe, I really don't know, but the only stories that I've heard about wheel assemblies coming off semi-trucks and trailers is in the province of Ontario. I mean, like I said, if there's other smart drivers here or people watching this on the replay, if you've heard of other stories in the United States or in Australia or Europe or wherever, you know, let me know, because I'd be interested to hear about that, because at this point in my life, you know, driving truck, and I can remember the change when this happened in Ontario, because this is what impacted pre-trip inspections for driver training schools, is that you had to put your hand on and twist the lug nuts on the wheels, every wheel. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of lug nuts on there holding the wheels on, and you had to check them all. And, you know, we as driving instructors just thought it was the dumbest thing ever, because, you know, some of you may or may not know that when they put wheels on a passenger vehicle, so on your car or truck, you change the tires, the wheels are torqued at 100 foot-pounds, okay? Which is, you know, it's a torque wrench about this long, and you put it down and it clicks when it gets to 100 pounds. Now, on a semi-truck and trailer, when they put the tires on there, and I've seen them do this, they torque the wheels at 500 foot-pounds. So they have a 3-foot torque wrench, and then they put a bar on it, and there's 2 people that work the torque wrench to torque the lug nuts on the semi-trailer when they're putting them on there. So it's 500 pounds of foot torque. It's 2 people to put them on there. And those of us, you know, truck drivers and whatnot, going down and twisting the nuts with our hand is just, it's dumb. Because there's no way you're going to tell if a lug nut is loose just by putting your hand on it and twisting it. When they're torqued at 500 foot-pounds. It's an incredible amount of pressure on these lug nuts, which is just over the top. All right. Yeah, Agnes, mind-blowing seeing flying truck tires, exactly. And like I said, hundreds of thousands of trucks going up and down highways and freeways every day, and it's unlikely it's going to happen. And it's because it's sensational, it's going to make the news, right? Even if there's a near miss, right? So, okay. Photographer, would ICBC allow this as their examiners are in a union? Traveling photographer, again, they're simply not going to move people. You know, it's going to take a really strong leader to enact legislation or an executive order that will allow young drivers who are in the learner's phase to move through to the novice phase or the probationary stage of their license. Because people instantly think, the public instantly thinks that these young people are not going to be road tested. They don't realize that there's another road test for them before they get their full license, that they are in a probationary stage. As well, they can't do it without oversight. There has to be oversight. And I'm saying that they should bring local driving schools on board so that they can provide the oversight, right? And the other point about this is that a lot of people who are saying, no, don't do this, are still thinking of our kind of driver licensing system back in the 1980s, before the GDL came in place, before we had social media, before we had all of this access to information that we now have. Young people have an incredible amount of information. And the driving instructor in Georgia who spearheaded the petition there says, young people are not working with their parents. Young people are unsupervised. And I work with all these people who the new drivers are unsupervised. That's not true. That's simply not true, because in the learner's phase, you have to have a mentor to get 30, 50, 60 hours of driving time. That's part of your requirement. You have to have an affidavit that you sign, a legal document signing, saying that you did 30 hours of practice driving or 50 hours of practice driving. So these young people in the learner's phase are obviously working with some sort of mentor. They're working with their parents, with their uncles, with friends, whoever. They're obviously working with somebody. So, driving instructors saying that, no, they're not, they're completely unsupervised, that's not true. And in my thinking, the GDL program isn't working, and authorities will say to you, oh, well, the GDL and the GLP programs, the graduated licensing program, has reduced the number of traffic deaths. That's amongst young people. That's not true. What it's done is postponed when young people get their full license. So naturally, governments can say, oh, young people are not having as many crashes. Of course they're not having as many crashes, because they don't get a license until they're 21 or 25 or 30 in some instances. So that's what I have to say about that. I'm really a proponent of doing this to deal with this backlog, right? Because I don't expect people to wait a year or 18 months or 2 years to get a license and take a driver's license test. So that's my thinking about it. All right. So ICBC, whether they're going to do it, I don't know, photographer, whether they're going to do that or not. Marine, if I pass the driver's test for G5, how long do I have to wait to do the advanced driver's test? Okay, so Raptor, most of the time, I don't know where you are, whether that's a misspell here, but Raptor, usually in the probationary stage of your license or the novice phase, it's usually 2 years. It can be shorter time, but most places it's around the 2-year mark. Okay. Bobby, if I fail to do hand over hand on the road test, is it an automatic fail? No, Bobby. There's 2 ways of manipulating the steering wheel for the purposes of a driver's test. It's either hand to hand or it's hand over hand. Most places in North America, in Canada, the United States, it's going to be hand over hand. But if you're choosing to do the push-pull method or hand-to-hand method, then you can do that as well for the purposes of the driver's test. I don't teach hand-to-hand simply because I don't think it's as fast as the hand-over-hand, that you can manipulate the steering wheel more quicker with hand-over-hand technique. Okay? Carrie, it was a big one. I thought it was a huge construction cone. My husband thought it was a construction barrel. It happened so quickly. Went to the next exit because, though not safe. Yeah. And Carrie, where did the construction pylon come from? Like, did somebody else hit it and then it flew into your lane? Is that what happened? Okay. Jaden, where'd you go? Oh, I had it and then it just disappeared. I got experience, but I just want to wait until I get my own car to take the driver's tests. This is what Kendall's saying. If they allowed me to take the learner's test, that will be perfect. The other thing, okay, and here's the other suggestion that I will make to all of you here today or watching on the replay. If you're trying to get a driver's test and you're not having any luck with the DMV or your authority that does the testing, the other option that you have is to go to a driving school. Driving schools have slots of time every week that they're booked in for their driver's test with their students. Now, if you go to a driving school to take your test with the driving school, you may have to do like 3 or 4 lessons with them and then pay to use their car. So it's going to cost you a bit more money to take a driving test with a driving school, but you may be able to get your driving test booked sooner with a driving school than you could on your own, just trying to book a slot with the DMV or the test center. So know that as well, so that most driving schools will have a time slot each week. So depending on how big the driving school is, they'll have 6 slots every week that they need to fill with students who are taking driver's tests. And the reason for that is because these driving schools just do that number of road driver's tests every week and they fill those slots up. If they don't fill those slots up, or say they have 6 slots a week and they only have 5 students that go in, they'll call into the test center and they'll say, listen, we only have 5 this week, put the other one out to the public, and the public can pick that driver's test up. So that's another way that you could maybe potentially expedite getting your driver's test and do that. Yes, Agnes, and some of them offer a good deal. On Autosurance, you save $500. So yes, and that the point that Agnes just made about insurance, if you're taking lessons with a driving school, you can use that for a discount on your insurance as well. Do you recommend any school in Coquitlam to pass Class 7? Han, I would need to look that up for you. Essentially, what I recommend to students is when you're looking for a driving school in your particular area, simply go on Google and look at their ratings, okay? Because people will leave ratings about the school, especially if they dislike the school. But if they have a high rating, then you're probably going to be okay with that driving school. Okay. Colin, has anyone heard any news about the reopenings in Ontario? Colin, at this juncture, Ontario is planning to open on the 22nd of June. That's what I've heard about the province of Ontario, but I haven't heard anything further to substantiate that or whether that's actually going to happen there in the province of Ontario. Okay. Bobby, I know here in BC they just allowed CDL road tests, so I am hoping other road tests will resume soon. And I am hoping as well, Bobby, because now we're moving into almost 4 months that ICBC has been closed. And this is the same as, the state of California and other places that are still closed. It's just an incredible amount of time and an incredible backlog of driver's tests, that they have to work through in order to get people a license. Okay, so Carrie says, I was in the right lane and another car ahead of mine in the left lane. They hit this cone and then it flew into my lane. It was really windy day on Sunday. Okay, yeah. So Carrie, it's tough because it's not something that you expect to happen when you're on the freeway. For example, with cones and those types of things. It's one of those split-second decisions that you need to make when you're driving. For example, an animal runs out in front of the road. You need to make that split-second decision as to, am I going to swerve or am I going to simply run over whatever is on the roadway, right? So you have gators, which they're called in the trucking industry, a piece of retread or tire, or there's a piece of garbage or whatnot on the roadway. You need, if you're close to another vehicle, so you're in the right lane and there's another vehicle in front of you on the left, it's a split-second decision. So whether you're going to hit it or whether you're not going to hit it is just something that you need to make that split-second decision in the moment, and it's something that's experiential, right? You don't know whether you should or you shouldn't. You probably did the right thing, right? But it's usually something that I recommend against on a freeway is to slow down, especially if you got people behind you. But it's kind of being aware of your surroundings. If you're in the right lane and you're checking your center mirror and seeing where vehicles are behind you, then you can know whether you can slow down or those types of things. But generally on a freeway, you don't want to slow down because you risk being rear-ended. So that's what I can say about that. Okay, Neptune, winter road salt and sand can damage the parts underneath your vehicle. Tires can come loose because of a broken axle. I bought a car in November and had a protective coating put underneath. Yes, and all of that does damage. And, hundreds, millions and millions of cars going up and down the road every day. Technology is certainly a lot different in this day and age than it was even 10 years ago. I mean, now to prevent rusting of the components, they now have an electrical current that flows through the body from the battery when the vehicle is running, and this prevents rust. I'm not sure how this system works, but as Neptune said, you can get undercoating and those types of things. The bottom line is that these vehicles are moving up and down the road and they break, right? They deteriorate over time. And sometimes we can spot it before it happens. Other times we can't. It just simply happens when you're out on the roadway and those types of things. So, it's just something, it's it's probably a very small percentage of the total number of crashes that happen on roadways is mechanical defects on either passenger vehicles or mechanical defects on tractor trailers and trucks and buses and those types of things. Okay. I just posted the picture of my friend's new vehicle that he's going to get soon. It's on Facebook. Excellent. I'll have a look at that, Jaden. Perfect. Colin, this is okay. I don't do it myself, but why is talking on the phone while driving illegal? No, not texting, but speaking on the phone. The reason, Colin, it's not. You can talk on the phone, Colin, but you need a hands-free device, and this is only for. It depends where you are, in which state you're in or which province you're in, but you can use a hands-free device. Sometimes for new drivers, you can't do it when you're in the probationary stage or in the novice phase. You can't do it until you get a full license. And the reason for that is because new drivers are inexperienced and it's difficult for them to multitask to be able to drive the vehicle and talk on a phone at the same time. And they've also done studies to show that it doesn't matter whether it's a hands-free or handheld cell phone, that it divides your attention. And most people who get into a crash because they're on their phone, talking on their phone, is in the seconds after they end the call. They're thinking about what's going on in the call, and then they have a crash within 30 seconds to a minute immediately after the phone call. So it is dangerous. It does distract you. It does divide your attention. So that's the reason that you can't do that. Okay. Bobby, is Young Drivers of Canada only good driving school in the Kelowna area? No, Bobby, there's other ones as well. And again, what I would suggest to you, Bobby, is to Google it. Google the driving schools. Just go to Kelowna driving schools and see what their rating is when you pull that up and have a look at that. Raptor, I'm guessing G5 road test, they don't require you to reverse park. Am I right? No. In Alberta, excellent question. The 3 maneuvers that you are going to be required to do on a driver's test at minimum: reverse parking, reverse stall parking, 3-point turn, parallel parking, and be ready for those. And as well, wherever you go to take your driver's test, figure out whether they're going to parallel park with cones or whether they're going to get you to parallel park on the roadway behind another vehicle. That is going to it's going to be different because it's slightly different technique with cones than it is with parking behind another vehicle. So have a look at those videos here on the channel as well. Jaden, also, when I was taking my dad for jiu-jitsu, every time I have to park very far, and once a vehicle with a parking spot, I got into his truck and we parked. Okay, I didn't follow that, Jaden. Maybe you could reword that for me. Okay, DC, any idea if driving schools will operate when drive test centers will open up next week? DC, driving schools have already gone back to work. Here where I live in British Columbia, they're already out and students are already taking lessons in preparation for, whenever the test centers open up again. The other thing is that drivers who had their driving test canceled during the shutdown are going to be the first to get a driver's test as these test centers begin to open up in phases, and the state of New York and province of British Columbia here where I live, they're only doing commercial testing at this juncture. They're not doing passenger vehicles. So, it's going to be a while for them to work through that. Animals, assuming this got lost, what could help ease nerves? I practiced on the road to take my to my house and had someone honk at me. I was doing well up until then. Animals, one of the things you can do to relax is just to, breathe. And, when somebody honks at you or somebody's crowding you or those types of things, know that it's going to happen, okay? Especially when you're learning how to drive and you're preparing for a driver's test. Because I don't know what it is about people who get behind the wheel, but they do these goofy things. Know that it's going to happen. If somebody honks at you, you just say to yourself, okay, that happened. And you just take a breath, focus on what you're doing. Don't get caught up in what other people are doing. Because I think for a lot of young people, they succumb to the peer pressure of social driving, right? Because it's an activity. It's a social activity, driving, right? And there's a lot of other people on there. They want you to be predictable. They want you to keep up with traffic flow and those types of things, but you can't. You have to do the posted speed limit. Otherwise, you're not preparing for your driver's test. And if you don't do the posted speed limit on your driver's test, you're not going to be successful. Unfortunately, when you're doing the posted speed limit, when you're practicing, other people are going to honk at you. So Just breathe, know what's going to happen. So I think if you can kind of change the thinking in your mind that somebody is going to honk at you eventually, so when it does happen, you can simply say, okay, that happened, and then take a breath and hone in back in onto what you're doing and carry on with your day and have a great day. Okay. Carrie, thanks for the insight into my situation. It was scary seeing this big construction cone heading at my car going at 60 miles an hour. You were right. Did not expect this situation. Appreciate your help. Not a problem at all, Carrie. Absolutely. And in my days of driving, I've certainly had my near misses too. I mean, in Toronto, for example, I had a near miss one time. I was coming up to an intersection. It was an intersection where there was an off ramp off the 401. It was on Dixon Road in Toronto, actually. And I'm not even sure. I can't even really remember what happened, but I'm looking at the traffic light, and in my mind, the traffic light was green as far as I know. And, I'm barreling down the road 50, 60 kilometers an hour, 30, 40 miles an hour on Dixon Road in a tractor trailer. And all of a sudden I look down and there's a car stopped at the intersection with the hood up. And, I didn't know whether there was a car beside me on the left-hand side or whatnot. And, I just panicked. I just cranked the truck over into the left lane and up and halfway through the intersection on the brakes before I got the thing stopped. Stopped the truck, popped on the parking brakes, got out of the truck, went back, and there was another pickup truck there behind me. Just completely freaked out because I thought I was just going to plow into this parked car sitting at the intersection with no warning that this car was stopped. And, I got out and there other people stopped as well and those types of things. And, I asked if everybody was okay and everybody was all right. And, I said to the person in the car, I said, you don't even have your four-way flashers on to tell other traffic that you're stopped at the intersection. I said, that's the least you should be doing where you're sitting with that car that's broken down. I said, the other thing is you're on an incline. I said, just put it into neutral and control the car and get it back and get it off the road. I said, I just about ran over you in the tractor trailer. So, Carrie, when you have those unexpected things happen to you, it just completely freaks you out. And to this day, I can still remember just my heart going 100,000 miles a minute, thinking I had clobbered somebody with the tractor trailer. And this is just a more, prudent driving, smart driving for all of you here, and those of you maybe watching on the replay. If your vehicle is broken down, try and get it off the road as far as you can. Don't leave it on the road. But if you do leave it on the road because something happens, at least put your four-way flashers on to, get the attention of other people. But if you're on an incline, just let the vehicle roll and get it off the road so it's not an obstacle for somebody else to potentially run into. So I know exactly what you're talking about, Carrie. That was, one of the few, one of the many that I've had over the years in my time of driving. Okay. Jaden, every time okay, so here we go. I have to park the truck far, and when the vehicle leaves the parking space, I go back. My dad's, okay, so you repark so that it's closer. I see what you're saying. Okay, thanks for clarifying that for me, Jaden. Bobby, is it possible the examiner will make you parallel park in a tight spot on the road test, or does it depend on the size of your car? Don't want to be caught off guard. Okay, so Bobby, most parallel parking, they're not going to make you park between two vehicles. It's rare that they make you park between two vehicles. There are some centers that they will make you parallel park between two vehicles. Most of the time, if the examiner can find one vehicle, they will simply make you parallel park off one vehicle. It's a real ogre, a real poopy head that's going to get you to parallel park between two vehicles or do a tight fit. They're not going to get you to do that. At one and the same time, saying that, do be ready to parallel park between two vehicles, but they're not going to get you to do that. As well, for your test center, make sure you know whether they're going to make you parallel park off a car or whether they're going to do it with cones, because it's a slightly different technique if you do it with cones, okay? Ben, please, what are the steps to take when merging onto a highway or freeway? Excellent. Okay, so Ben, on the freeway. Okay, so you want to get up to speed as quickly as possible. That's what you want to do. Now, there's different parts of the road as you're getting on a freeway. So there's the on-ramp, and that's the part where you come out and it sets you up to get on the acceleration lane, and you know that you're on the acceleration lane when the lines on the outside of the lane go from solid to dotted, and know that the line is going to go dotted, and in North America it's going to be a continuity line. And it's a continuity line because the lane that you're in on the acceleration lane either ends or exit, and continuity lines are half as long and twice as wide. So as you're coming out on the on-ramp, you're looking out on the freeway, you're looking out on the highway, and you're picking your gap where you're going to merge into, okay? So you're coming out on the on-ramp, you've got your signal on, and you're accelerating, and you're picking your space where you're going to merge into. And then you simply get the vehicle up to speed. You might have to put the throttle on the floor to get it up to speed, and then aim for that hole, okay? Some people on the highway or freeway will help you to merge onto the freeway. Some will not. But the onus of responsibility is on you. But if you signal early and get out on the acceleration lane and you're huffing on that thing and aiming for your gap that you're going to merge into, then everything should go according to plan. Now, the other question that I get again and again is that what happens if it's backed up traffic? Again, if it's backed up traffic, get out there, put your signal on, pick your spot that you want to move into, and if they don't open up or they don't help you to create a gap, then move to the left side of the acceleration lane. Not out of the lane, but to the left side, and start crowding that lane. That way people will start to freak out and they'll create a gap for you, because if people just can't wait for you, they're not going to just not let you in when that happens. So know that. Just crowd that left side, keep your signal on, and you'll be all right. Okay? So that's, in a nutshell, sort of how you do that. Okay. Justin, my friend, how are you? Agnes, you like that poopy head. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So I think we're getting near the end. So just if you have any questions about the reopening of driving test centers in the United States, here in Canada, we'll definitely help you out with all of that. Subash, can we directly merge into the middle lane from the acceleration lane? No, you can't. Okay. Subash, you can. Okay. So you get on the acceleration lane, leave your signal on, and what you need to do is move out into the lane and then pause. Usually I would say for a count of 3, mirror signal, shoulder check, and have another look into the center lane to see whether it's safe to move into that lane. But get settled in this lane first. Get comfortable. You're going up, you're doing the flow of traffic or the posted speed limit, and then you want to move into the center lane. Just leave your signal on when you're in this lane and then merge over to that lane. But you need sort of that count of 3, mirror signal, shoulder check, checking forward, mirror signal, shoulder check, and then move over. Don't just merge right over, okay? Can't do that. Definitely on a road test, don't do that. Okay, Joe, you can always treat these situations as learning experience. I hit some black ice once, spun out and wound up in the ditch. I screwed up. I can handle it much better. Yes, and it comes with experience, Joe. That's just the thing is that driving isn't a spectator sport. It's something you got to get in the vehicle, and it's something you have to do. And you're going to have near misses. I can remember a fellow bus driver, one of my colleagues when I was in Australia, and when you come out of Sydney, when you come out of downtown, one of the suburbs there in Sydney, Australia, they have a tunnel underneath the suburb for the freeway, and he was telling me the story. He's coming out of there, and he's down under the tunnel. He come out the other end, and he went to merge onto the inside lane because they're driving on the left side in Australia. And he said he looked, everything was clear, checked the mirror, paused, waited, looked, and then he started to move over, looked one last time just before he started to move over, and there's a car, like, right beside him. He said he just, like, had a heart attack as he's wheeling the bus back into his lane. And, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So, and you got to make those split-second decisions, which just really get the old heart rate going. Katie, thanks for creating this wonderful video and helping me prepare for my learner's permit. You are most welcome, Katie. Ben, thank you very much. I'm actually taking my driving test next week in France. Brilliant. Awesome. Okay, good luck on that. Epic. Tips on channel is so helpful. Also, smart drivers giving information on how our current road tests are being done during the pandemic. Yes. So have a look, and I'll just as soon as I get off here on the live stream, I'll put the links down for the reopenings, what's happening in your state or your province over at the Smart Drive Test website. And if you have any questions at all, leave me a comment down there and I'll help you out as best I can to get you going here. So yes, and remember to breathe, as Bobby said. Breathe. That will cause your body to relax. So good luck on that. Hopefully the state of North Carolina gets the legislation passed, moving people from the novice phase into the or from the learners phase into the novice phase, and we get through some of this backlog. So all the best, and remember, have a great day. No, and remember, can't remember my tagline. Pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.